Where did Enoch and Elijah go? Where are they now? Many read they were taken and assume that meant their end was heaven. Yet that's never actually supported by Scripture, which is not silent, especially on Enoch. And now we have found a reference to Elijah, and this is good. But where did they go then? I mean, why not heaven? Well, because men don't go to heaven except Yahushua to visit, yes, to have visions of heaven, sure. Live there? Nope, none. That is what Messiah told us in John 3:13. No man has ascended prior to him, meaning to live or dwell in heaven. So, also, you can watch our series, Where Do We Go When We Die, as well for the Bible position on that topic. It may surprise many that most churches don't actually know the Bible's position on that. Enoch visited, but they would not end up residing there according to abundant Scripture, but propagate occult myth instead in their church doctrines on that topic as well. We've heard from some. However, there is not much on what happened to Elijah that we find until now. That is because Enoch tells us where Elijah ended up. We'll deal with Enoch first, affirming our previous video on this topic, and then we'll end with Elijah. And did they die at some point? Because Scripture says it is appointed for all men to die, right? Well, step back and consider what happens on the day of judgment. All the dead are resurrected, and those still alive, that would include Enoch and Elijah, fit that category. They shed their old bodies and die physically and receive new bodies. It's instantaneous, but still they experience death, all including Enoch and Elijah, all men. So there is never any saying they don't die, and in fact, to use that verse in that way is to then ignore the fact that all of the people that are, the believers that have survived through the tribulation, well, hello, they're still alive. Something has to happen because they take on a new body, so hello, it's really not difficult. Yes, Enoch was promised no death, but this is semantics, as this will happen very quickly. And no need to try to handcuff Scripture with what is very obviously not an issue at all. And we get, I think, just about everything someone could throw at it on this channel. Of course, if they're doing so without watching the video, as most do, they will be muted. Our channel, our rules. This is going to be an awesome video as we lay it all out, starting now. Anyone who has not seen the first installment of this topic called Where Did Enoch Go? Well, please watch that first as we prove from Scripture, yes, the New Testament even, which is abundant on this topic, that Enoch most certainly did not die. But he does not reside in heaven either. Almost all of that video will not be covered here, as we're not going to repeat everything we already proved there. This will all be new pretty much, except for a couple of things. So attempt debate about Enoch on this video without watching that one, be muted. No debate in ignorance, our channel, our rules. Let's get to it. Open your book of 1st Enoch to chapter 81. We're going to cover verses 5 and 6. We've covered Enoch's journey around the earth at this point, even through its interior as well as heaven some. However, Enoch returns home first before he is taken, and that is the event itself. Verses 5 and 6. And those 7 holy ones, well, those are the 7 archangels. Imagine that Enoch knew all 7 of them, and they together took him around the earth different times, and now they're all returning him together. Wow. This dude is no joke, and they want to censor his words? Really, church? Illiterate. brought me and placed me on the earth before the door of my house. So Enoch came back home from this journey and said to me, declare everything to thy son Methuselah, and show to all thy children that no flesh is righteous in the sight of Yahuwah, for he is their creator. Now, this is where some read this fragment without qualifiers and without understanding forgiveness and grace at all in the Old Testament, which if you're not teaching it from the Old Testament, you're not teaching grace, you don't get it. Forget that Noah is righteous, as is his family, and then they would tell us that, well, Enoch just claimed all men died in the flood. Yeah. See, that's how they screw up so many things, reading in fragments. This video will be a perfect example of that. No, thank you. That's why we read several passages in parallel, and we compare them. We go into the Hebrew a lot of times on this channel and dig deeper and deeper. And we can end up learning things in doing so in full context that you just don't get out of a fragment, and you lose the meaning most of the time, in fact. 1 year we will leave thee with thy son. So 1 year he gets with his children and his lineage. Till thou givest thy last commands, that thou mayest teach thy children and record it for them. Got that? Yep, Enoch wrote a book, and you are looking at it right now, even quoted right out of this book directly, especially a paragraph in Jude with attribution to Enoch. But that must be some other book of Enoch, right? One that no one's ever found yet, and may not for thousands of years. So we have to keep ignoring this book because, well, the exact quote that Jude, used, that can't actually be this book, even though it's an exact quote. Nah, yeah, right. That is stupidity. Those scholars are just plain dumb in willing ignorance, period. There's nothing logical about that. And testify to all thy children, and in the 2nd year they shall take thee, the angels shall take thee from their midst. Okay, so he's going to be taken a year later. So the marker here is not death for Enoch. He will be taken, but to where? Now let's start with from where, and then we'll get to where he went to. We covered this in part 14 of this series. Enoch was literally taken by the angels, not death, from the region right by the entrance to the Garden of Eden in the ancient land of Havilah. This is where he and the righteous generations of Adam lived, which is why it's named after Adam's wife, which isn't Eve, it's Havah. Havilah means childbirth, one who suffers pain that brings forth labor in childbirth. A perfect match, and that proves to be the modern Philippines. Watch those videos as well as Solomon's Gold series and Answers in Jubilees, where we prove it, or read the search for King Solomon's Treasure, free in eBook at ophirinstitute.com. Try to debate that in ignorance, having not read or watched our full position. Forget about it. Don't waste everyone's time here. You will be muted if you try. It's our channel, our rules. And yes, we will know if someone does so in ignorance every time. Now, we covered in Where Did Enoch Go? Lots of scriptures, but also the book of Jubilees especially, which directly tells us exactly where Enoch ended up. It says that Enoch was conducted into the Garden of Eden. And then later it says that he burnt incense on the Mount of the East, which is the holy mountain of Yahuwah within the Garden of Eden. So 2 references that tell us exactly where he was. Now let's be clear. Jubilee says Enoch did not die, but resided in the Garden of Eden. So does Enoch, that you are about to see, as well as abundant scripture, we already covered, and also Genesis, Apocryphon even, and we'll get to where Elijah went as well at the end. Now, some keep bringing up this one scripture in Jubilees. Some just try, to learn, and that's fine, no problem. The question is welcome every time. But, of course, there's likely also at least one illiterate criminal harassing blogger who brings it up over and over because, well, he is incapable of understanding context of pretty much anything. History, geography, science, even the Bible, none of it. He doesn't get even a sentence out of either. Not sure why one so illiterate would run his mouth over and over in the dumbest rants we have ever seen. The guy is a clown. But anyway, Jubilees 7, this is Noah speaking. Verse 39. And I also will give you commandment, my sons, as Enoch commanded his son in the first Jubilees. So that's exactly as Enoch wrote that he did. Whilst still living. Wait, what? We'll get there. The seventh in his generation, that is the Enoch, the prophet Enoch, the same one that we've been talking about that wrote this book. He commanded and testified to his son and to his son's sons until the day of his death. Oh, wait a minute. So Enoch died then? No. Jubilees just said he didn't die, did it not? But was taken into the Garden of Eden alive. And he lived there. Again, even the New Testament is clear on that. So can Jubilees then disagree with itself? And worse, could Noah disagree with himself too? Because, well, that is the accusation of those who seize on fragments out of context and don't think through the ramifications of their accusation against a patriarch. And they do it all the time, even against Yahusha, basically making it sound like he didn't know what he was talking about. And every time, those can be reconciled. Do we forget Jubilees says Enoch did not die, but change our mind and say, oh, well, no, now he did, but he didn't, but he did, but he, well, maybe, but no, I don't know. What? We can know. It's time to know. It's time to stop this ridiculous scholarly babble. That is the way they operate. They spend a lot of time on the gray areas, and they try to find things to bring the Bible in question or in doubt, rather than doing the opposite. No, we reconcile these kinds of so-called discrepancies, which really are not conflicts at all, every time. And I repeat, every time. It's an ancient language we're reading here. The translators were not perfect. You know, there's a lot to this. And what an inept mindset to take that stance. But anyway, it's the understanding that is in conflict, not what was actually said, not in the original. And yes, if one operates that way, they'll never understand Scripture anytime. Now, we defended 119 Ministries here on this channel, who was being attacked by another channel, for basically saying something very similar to that. And they were right. So there. Clearly, this passage refers to an extremely rare occurrence, Enoch's disappearance from among men. That's it. It is easy to read the Hebrew and translate that as died, yes, yet he could not have died. Enoch did not die. And all of theology of the Old and New Testament is then supposedly changed by this one sentence? Nonsense. I mean, is it? Are we really to operate that way? We will not. We don't believe that any of you agree with that either. The Bible and these books found in the Bible canon of the true temple priests are inspired scripture. And in their original form, yes, they've been manipulated, but we can restore it to the original Hebrew even today, even with some of these Dead Sea Scrolls. They're never in conflict with one another. They cannot be. The prophets weren't that dumb, and to assume that they were is ignorance. But we can further test this. Did Noah really think Enoch died? I mean, that's what's at question here. That's what they're accusing him of. And the answer's very simple. No. No way. These are his words, mistranslated and misunderstood, so let's see his other words, and you will see what he truly believed. In a Noah fragment written by Noah. So his words here, But part of First Enoch as a book, it's chapter 60, though it could really be put anywhere because it's written by Noah, not Enoch. But it's verse 1. Noah knew Enoch did not die. How do we know? Well, he kept aging Enoch. He kept keeping track of his age, which continued even after he was taken. This is when he basically learned of the coming flood, which Noah measured by the 500th year of Enoch. And yes, that's what it says. So no, I know some scholars try to say, oh no, that must be the 500th year of Noah. No, it says Enoch. Duh, Enoch is not Noah. Enoch has taken at basically 365 years old, I believe it is. That's off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure that's about it. According to Genesis, so this is over 100 years later, a century later. And here you have Noah himself, still counting Enoch's years as if he's still alive. Why would he do that? Unless he was alive, period. No one knew this. In fact, the oldest living organism, a tree, they call it Methuselah, named after, of course, Noah's grandfather, Enoch's son, because he is the oldest, and that tree is the oldest, because Methuselah died at 969, which is really old. But see, Methuselah died. Enoch did not. And Enoch is far older, so really, they ought to call it the Enoch tree instead. In fact, even the dating would be closer to Enoch's count. So, just saying. Turn to 1 Enoch, chapter 106, way back there. This is another Noah fragment, written by Noah, not Enoch. And it's regarding Noah's birth. See, there were some strange features that his father Lamech thought might be questionable. So he goes to his father. And his father, Methuselah, promises Lamech, Noah's father, that he will go to Enoch and confirm whether Noah's odd appearance is holy or unholy. If Enoch's dead, he is not doing that. Not in the Bible, not a practice. Of course, Noah was holy and all is well, but where was Enoch? Well, he was among the angels, according to this passage, still in the Garden of Eden, still alive at the ends of the earth under the modern Philippines, which we prove. Again, go debate that on those videos, not this one. We're not reproving that here. Our channel, our rules, you will be muted if you try. Enoch then comes out of the garden. No, Methuselah cannot enter, nor can any other man, generally, other than there'll be one more who is granted access later, and we'll discuss him. Flaming sword, 2 or more powerful angel guards, didn't happen. Enoch comes out and declares, Noah is holy, of course, but there's Enoch. He's still alive. Even after he was taken. See, he did not die. We've covered this in the previous video we mentioned. Genesis Apocryphon confirms this account in 1 Enoch. So we're not reading a couple of these that are repeats. However, it ties Parvaim, or Parvaim, really. There's actually no V in ancient Hebrew, so even Parvaim is Parvaim. Another name for Ophir, according to Scripture, in the Hebrew, and the land of the Garden of Eden, which are one in the same, and that's where Enoch was. Still in the Philippines. Here, Methuselah is worried about, Enoch may get angry with him for visiting, because, he well knew the garden was sacred and holy, and he wasn't allowed in. See, he knew that. That was well known by all the patriarchs. Then Noah himself, when he learned of the coming flood, also did the same. He went to visit Enoch, who was still alive in the Garden of Eden. Let's see. Let's go to 1 Enoch chapter 65, verse 1. And in those days Noah saw the earth, that it had sunk down, and its destruction was nigh. And he rose from thence and went to the ends of the earth. Now that's the same as Methuselah, and the ends of the earth is a well-known term for the Far East in many platforms. Even the Greeks, you see it throughout history. And cried aloud to his grandfather Enoch. Wait a minute, he talked to him? And Noah said 3 times with an embittered voice, "Hear me, hear me, hear me," trying to get his attention to come out, because Noah too knew he was not allowed in. See, that's right, even the righteous Noah could not enter the Garden of Eden. Verse 3, "And I said unto him, Tell me what it is that is falling out on the earth, that the earth is in such evil plight and shaken, lest perchance I shall perish with it." Imagine that. Speaking of the coming flood, of course. Verse 4, "And thereupon there was a great commotion on the earth, and a voice was heard from heaven, and I fell on my face. And Enoch, my grandfather, came and stood by me, and said unto me," well, Enoch came out of the garden and stood by and spoke with Noah, and comforted him, of course, encouraged him. Noah well knew Enoch was not dead. Enoch remained alive in the same place he is recorded going when he was taken, because when he was taken was not death, the Garden of Eden. And Enoch and Noah just told us so. So we have it in their own words. Pretty hard to find any better references, but again, this documented even in the New Testament, and no mystery at all. It never has been. Again, watch the first video on that. Okay, so what about Elijah? Do we know where he was taken? Well, he was taken up into the clouds, into heaven in Scripture indeed, but he too does not reside there. We don't know how long he spent there, and it doesn't really matter. But here's what Enoch says about Elijah. We actually do have a record of it, folks. Here it is, and we've been seeking this for some time. This is awesome, as there could be no better source apart from Yahusha himself, perhaps. And by the way, Enoch did go to heaven as well first. He did go to heaven. He visited heaven, but he did not reside there, and neither does Elijah. You'll see. Here we go. In 1 Enoch chapter 89, we're going to cover a prophecy that will blow your mind as Enoch predicted the flood, Abraham, Israel, Messiah, the second coming, the day of judgment, and much detail that is just going to blow the hairs off your head, and we will get there soon. But Enoch knew these things before the flood even the tabernacle, the temple, and its destruction. Wow, is all I can say. His prophecy is spot on. Yet, read the introduction and watch parts 1 and 2. This book was written before the flood. We prove that. I mean, Noah just told us he read and taught it, as did his fathers. So does Abraham. So there's really no questioning that. But again, we prove that in those videos. Don't try to debate that here. Our channel, our rules, you will be muted for trying. We're going to skip all that, but we will cover this in detail soon in this series, because that is some awesome stuff. I can't wait to get there. Starting in verse 51, though. "And again I saw those sheep." Now this is all symbology in this, but it very clearly, as you read through, you see the sheep as Israel. You'll see that very clearly. It's not real difficult. We know that from Scripture anyway, throughout the Old and New Testament. So, "that they again erred and went many ways, and forsook that their house, and Yahuwah of the sheep called some from amongst the sheep, and sent them to the sheep. But the sheep began to slay them." Who are these sheep that are sent amongst the sheep that they are slaying? We know that is the prophets. We all know this. And now specifically Elijah, and we'll see what happens to him. In fact, Messiah, in his very own words in Matthew 24:37, actually quotes that out of 2nd Esdras, by the way. It's a direct quote from 2nd Esdras. But regardless, that's scripture galore, no doubt. Verse 52, and one of them was saved and was not slain. Who was that? Which prophet was saved and didn't die? We know that is Elijah, of course. And it sped away and cried aloud over the sheep, and they sought to slay it. That's Ahab and Jezebel, who said something like, 1,000 troops after Elijah. It was so much that it definitely disheartened Elijah for sure. Yet he was a holy man. But Yahuwah of the sheep, Israel, saved it. That'd be Elijah, the prophet sheep, from the sheep and brought it up to me. Who's me? This is Enoch speaking here, writing here. He's the one who wrote this, and he saw this long before it ever happened. This is prophecy, him saying this is what's going to happen. And where does Elijah go? And caused it, that'd be Elijah, the prophet sheep, to dwell there. Where? With Enoch. What? Now, where is Enoch? Don't get confused by this translation, up. Enoch is not up, but down in the Garden of Eden, and Elijah was taken there too. Yes, he would have permission to enter from the guardian angels, obviously, so that is not an issue. I'm pretty sure, anyone arriving on a chariot of fire from Yahuwah probably had a ticket to get in. Yeah, so just as Enoch did. That should be no surprise, though you'd be surprised how many times we get ridicule in comments over dumb stuff like that people can't think through. You and I, however, can't enter, but it will be open to us again in the end on the day of judgment. That's a promise in Revelation we've covered before. I know some will likely comment, but the garden was destroyed in the flood, right? Wrong. It's like a mantra. I know we've heard that, and it's actually Kabbalah. They say, the tree of life was taken to another plane of existence. Woo! Let's do some Star Trek music, I guess. Kabbalah track. Watch, is the garden still there? We prove that it is. It most certainly is. In Revelation 3 times, even so, no, it was not flooded and not gone. Neither is the tree of life. It is enclosed, and the angels with a flaming sword in all directions, whose purpose is to keep the way of the tree of life, well, they executed their jobs, which remains in the midst of the garden in Revelation. It's still there. So it doesn't move. It's not taken to another plane of existence. It's all very clear. Scripture doesn't leave these kinds of things to debate. And there is no debate to have on the topic when you study Scripture thoroughly. So certainly those angels, though, they could keep it dry. That's not an issue for them. So there you go. New revelation. Elijah, just as Enoch, was also taken into the Garden of Eden, where the two of them remain. Wonder what they're doing? Well, they are priests. They're just as a temple priest in the Holy of Holies, because they are in the permanent Holy of Holies of Yahuwah. Now, we know Enoch was sacrificing even burnt offerings, according to the book of Jubilees we covered. So, essentially, they took the place of Adam, who was a priest in the garden. He was keeping the garden. It is clear this is the case, and these two continue to live and serve Yahuwah there. They remain holy and will to the end. Again, for the full position on Enoch, as this video is really about what Enoch says about himself, we're just adding to the previous, which is very important, of course. But watch, where did Enoch go? And together, these really offer a well-proven position no one has, even from the first video, nor will dismantle. Scripture is too clear. We know it may not be church doctrine, but we find many of those that have no basis in Scripture or are steeped in willing ignorance of scholars. This is increasing knowledge restored, which the ancients well knew, as they left the record for us when we don't ignore it, that is. Not that anyone ever does that, of course, right? Now, this is awesome indeed. We have over 400 videos on this channel, one for every day of the year now, many just as profound with some 50 or so in Tagalog for Filipinos, and now 6 in Spanish to start. We also have been setting up subtitles for 20 plus languages for most of our videos. Don't forget to like and subscribe and click the bell for notifications of new uploads. That's still important even though YouTube fails to notify often, so be sure to join our email list and we will notify you ourselves. Just go to thegodculture.com and fill in the pop-up there. We now have alternative platforms for videos on Rumble, Odyssey, and Utreon. And our new podcast is also available for all of our videos pretty much as well. All links in the description box. And friend us on Facebook at The God Culture, space original. If you prefer an alternative, we now have Parler, link below. We now have 6 books published internationally, being read in over 100 countries, with our new release now available, the first book of Enoch, the oldest book in history, and now you know it is. Just read the introduction if you have not, and watch the first couple of videos. We also have now launched Ophir Philippines Coffee Table Book in the US, Canada, UK, and many overseas markets, even Australia, Japan, different areas. Singapore, I think, need to check that, but I'm pretty sure it is there. Additionally, we launched, it's in hardcover or soft cover on those stores on Amazon. Additionally, we launched the Book of Jubilees, the Torah calendar with color maps and interior, which so many had requested overseas. We have color maps in the Philippines already for that. It's available in hardcover color or softcover color, and also still in the black and white on Amazon if you wish. All books, including Solomon's Treasure, are now free in eBook. By the way, the book of First Enoch is available in those same 3 platforms as Jubilees on Amazon, but just in black and white here in the Philippines. Just go to ophirinstitute.com for all the links for your area for all of our books. More coming soon. Thank you for watching. Now always remember, prove all things for yourself. Yah bless to everyone.